And it goes a little something like
Hello, Literates. I'm Britt Ryderly, and welcome back to Writer's Ambition. For those of you who've been hanging in since episode 1, you're a real one. And for those of you who just finding my humble channel, welcome. We hope you stay a while. So, this is going to be a reading vlog of Beasts of Prey. I'm just putting that out there right now. I have not done bookish content in a minute. I can't even remember what the last bookish video I did on my channel by myself was. I don't remember. But I decided to do a Beasts of Prey reading vlog because this is quickly becoming one of those books where it's like if I don't talk about what's going on as I read it, it'll be lost to me. Even writing it, I'm just like, no, I'm seeing so much. I didn't have any expectations for Beasts of Prey. Like I wasn't like hoping that it would do particular things, but it's doing so many things that I've been in conversation with other writers about that I am struggling to do in my own writing. And so first and foremost, I just want to say a heartfelt thank you to Ayana Gray. This woman is amazing, y'all. I've made my decision. If you disagree, that's okay. We all have the right to be wrong. But this book is amazing. It's quickly becoming and cementing itself as a master text. They say like when you're a writer, every writer needs to have a master text, a book that does something that you want to be able to do as a writer, something that you want to be able to grow in. And Ayana Gray is doing so many of the things that I have been asking so many, like, how do I do this? How do I do that? I don't know. Like, and people have said varying things. Sometimes people are just like, that's a good question, I don't know the answer, right? But I am getting the answer unexpectedly through Beast of Prey, and I am so extremely grateful to Ayana Gray for writing this book. And so we'll start off talking about the writerly things maybe, and then we'll blend. I don't have any plans because she has scrambled my brain. But this is day 1 of the reading vlog. I actually started reading this book. I'm looking at my Twitter thread. 2 days ago, September 30th, I started it, but I dipped a toe in and I had to dip out because I was preparing for a guest lecture that is now over. Yay. And so now I'm like in it, but I started it September 28th. This is going to be day 1 because I'm just like, the things I'm starting to see are appearing. So from a writerly perspective, can we talk about the language? Like, first of all, I'm writing a YA fantasy. And I'm not even talking about the world building, although the world building is splendid, pun intended. The language choices that Ayana Gray is making are so good. Like, the language is just fresh. Can we say that the language is fresh? The language is giving me, I just went and picked this off the tree and gave it to you. It's giving me farm to table freshness. It's good. The choices are good. Like, we hear a lot of the same language in YA fantasy sometimes, like the same descriptive language, and I am getting fresh language from Ayana Gray. If you're hearing the ogres above me, I'm sorry, I have no control. But the language choices of Beast of Prey are just like fresh. Like, I find myself sitting up listening to this book and just like, not even like in action scenes or like suspenseful scenes, although there are plenty. Just like in listening to the language, I find myself so engaged in how she is choosing to describe things. She describes the city, Lacosa. I think the city's called Lacosa. If it's not, my bad. As like a pie. Just like if the city were a pie, or if the city were a pie, I guess each slice would be its own sort of like thing, like textiles and food, etc., etc. And I was like, if the city were a pie? But it works. Like, I see a city that like is in the shape of a pie, and I'm seeing the sectors. I see the cluster in the middle where the pie is sort of, I see it. And so it's just choices that are surprising, but like really visual. And I think that sort of seemingly effortless, like right, those fun choices where it's just like, what? Oh, okay. Like those are small things that just keep you engaged throughout the book where you're like, that was fun. Okay, I'm listening. Right. And so I think in those ways, the book is just really well written. One, characters. So it's 3 POV. That's another thing where I'm like, oh, a debut writer having multiple POVs. So it is possible. Loving it because Alice Walker reminds us that models are important to Black artists, and this is true. So Kofi, Ekon, and Adia. Kofi works in a night zoo, and it's kind of like convict leasing, and the only difference is like you don't have to be, they don't, like in convict leasing, let me back up, not assume. Convict leasing, like after the abolition of slavery, if you committed a crime and went to jail, if you could not pay your bail, a sharecropper or a farmer or someone could pay your bail for you, and you would pay your bail back to them. Yay, except. So say you are working for Farmer Watson. Farmer Watson bails you out. Your bail is $50. Okay, so you are gonna work that $50 off with Farmer Watson. But every day I feed you, that's an extra $1. Also if you're sleeping here, that's $2 for board. And then all of a sudden, right, it starts adding up and paying off I'm paying you 10 cents a day. Right, so like things start to add up quicker than you can pay them off, and now all of a sudden convict leasing is another avenue into coerced Black labor. And so just to give you that bit of, again, like the way that Black American history is like coming in. So the night zoo is very much like that without the convict part, but if you owe a debt, you're paying it to Bazo, who is the ringleader of the zoo. You're paying it back to him over time. So Kofi and her mother worked there, and they are paying off their debt. They are 2 days from paying it off when Kofi makes a mistake because she didn't listen to her mother, and an accident was made. This like serpentine lizard-like kind of animal snaps at a business at a merchant's wife. And here's the thing: why would you be spraying perfume near an animal? Why would you? Should Kofi have checked his collar? Sure. But riddle me this: why are we at a zoo saying it stinks? Why are we at a zoo saying it stinks? What did you expect I don't understand. So first of all, I found that ridiculous. And then she's spraying perfume in the air. You want to get bitten, you better be lucky he didn't actually snap your foot, which is what I was expecting. I was expecting her to go home limbless, but she didn't. So I'm just like, why can't we be grateful and cut them some slack? But she didn't. And so Kofi gets in trouble. Her mom is taken to the whipping post. All of these things are giving me slavery. So Kofi and her mother have to stay for longer because he charges them the price of the 2 tickets, which is like $1,000 or so, whatever. They're gonna have to stay for 6 more months. Which that's how convict leasing works. Things happen. All of a sudden, oh my gosh, you owe me more money. Add it to the tab, right? So like, just seeing how Ayanna Gray is weaving together history in this fantastical narrative is just really exciting to see, and it keeps me engaged and on my toes. So that's exciting. And this is all just like in part 1. All in part 1. So that's happening. The second POV is Ekon. He is 16 or 15. He is trying to be a son of the Six, which are like the warriors of Lakosa. His brother already is. His father was. And you get the sense you get confirmed that something happened to their dad, like he was killed by a monster, and Kofi was there and he saw, and he didn't do anything. Now, what Ekon thought he was going to be able to do, I don't know. You're like 16 now. If you were younger than that, I don't know what you thought you were, but such is childhood. So he's working through that trauma. And he wants to be a son of the sixth. He's going through a series of tests. They get called because Bazo Circus is on fire. Kofi has done some magic they call Magic Splendor. I think that's an amazing. I love it. I love it. So that it's called Splendor. Splendor, jubilation, and that's what magic is called in Carly Cawthron's Daughters of Jubilation. I love these different names for magic. I find them amazing. Like, we can say magic, we can say gifts, but I think that Splendor and Jubilee, I think that's it just takes it. It just takes it. I love it. So anyway, Kofi has power over Splendor. She did not know this. Her mom told her that magic wasn't a real thing. And so she accidentally, when her mother's about to get taken out to the whipping post, I think, she sparks a flame that burns and becomes a fire. The zoo catches fire. Ekon comes and because all the sons get called in to put it out. And they're told the people working here are indentured servants legally. So if you catch any on the run, snatch them up. So when Kofi's mother realizes that Kofi is the one that sparked this fire, she tries to get her out because she's like, if Bazo finds out that you just did that, you'll become an attraction. So, and we know there's a history of Black women being made attractions in zoos. Sir J. Bartman, anyone, hello. Okay, so her mother tries to flee with Kofi. Ekon, who at first I was like, oh, Ekon, the nerd, I love him. We have a little bit of beef marinating now, Ekon and I, because he spots Kofi and her mother fleeing and is like, look, because he wants to be a son of the six, and so he wants to please them. So he points out these fleeing runaways. Wow. The concept of Black people stealing themselves will never cease to blow my mind. But anyway, he spots them, calls them out, and then he and Shamari, I don't like Shamari. Him and Shamari give chase. Shamari throws a stone, hits Kofi's mother in the head. She falls backwards, is presumed dead. And Kofi runs off. Ekon catches up with her, grabs her, and then what should they run into but the Shetani. Now, the Shetani is this mythical beast that's sort of moving the plot, the A-plot, where it's oh my gosh, the Shetani, it's terrorizing everyone, it's affecting travel and merchant sales and blah, 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 blah. So they see the Shetani, and Kofi says, go. And the Shetani, they're having a moment. And it just is looking at her. And she repeats it again and She repeats herself and says, go. And the Shetani just goes on its way. This surprises Ekon so much that he lets her go. And then she runs away. And he says, I could have caught her, but I let her go. Okay, so when later he continues to blame her, he then blames the Shetani. Let's recall that you said she wasn't particularly fast. I could have caught her. I let her go. It's amazing when people just start to rewrite history. It always boggles my mind. But anyway, so he lets her go. He gets disqualified from ever being a son of the six, and then decides, hey, I know what I'll do. I will go find the Shetani, kill it, and then I will be able to be a son of the six. At the same time, or rather parallel to that, Kofi gets captured. She gets 35 more years put on her debt, and then says, hey, if I catch you the Shetani for your circus attraction, can I be free of my debt? Me and my mother, who's actually not dead. Me, my mother, and my friend. And he says, sure, you have a week, basically. So now the two of them are both trying to catch this creature. Now, here's what I will say, because that was a lot. Here's what I will say about all of that. Ever since reading The Gilded Ones, ever since reading The Dark Fantastic by Ebony Elizabeth Thomas, am very fascinated by the way that monsters get used and deployed in fantasy. I'm just fascinated by the subjectivity of the monster. Obviously, I am. My dissertation is on this. Not this book, but monstrosity. I am just, and I'm just watching. We're just starting to see it in part 2, so I won't see too much about it for today. But I am just fascinated by the way that Ayana Gray is using the Shaitani to mean so much to everyone, so many different things. And I just that. We will talk more about monstrosity tomorrow. But I am just fascinated by the way that monstrosity is being used, because what we know is that monsters are whatever we fear. Right? The monster doesn't come speaking of itself, and we could even, and now I'll put it like down here, but monster scholarship, right, tells us that the Latin root of the word monster is essentially means like messenger. And so the monster is coming to reveal something. It's a revelatory figure. And so when we're saying, oh, the Shaitani is just a monster, oh, it's just a fearsome beast that doesn't have any intelligence, it just eats, and just destruction and abomination, and don't write anything about it unless it's to say who it's killed. That is an active decision to form a narrative around something that you've decided you only want to be one of fear and death. Right, because you're not saying what does it eat. You're not saying what is it afraid of. You're not saying where it came from. You're only going to narrativize the death and destruction it causes with no context for when the Shaitani kills. And so I think that just being aware as I'm moving through the book of monsters are figures of revelation, I'm just wondering what Ayana Gray wants this monster to reveal. And I'm just marking what this monster is coming to signify for 2 of our 3 POV characters. For Kofi, it signifies freedom, right? A cancellation of debt. We might also call that jubilation, right? Because like in the Jewish culture, the 49th year is the year of jubilation. That's when all debts are canceled. Servants can be free, like all sins that have been rolled forward or like completely forgiven, right? So like for her, the Shaitani is the figure of jubilation, right? Of possibility, of life, even though it's said to be a creature of death. Wow. And then for Ekon, the Shaitani represents several conflicting things, right? It represents failure, right? Because at this point, he's blaming the Shaitani for him letting Kofi go. Now, Ekon, what happened to the original plot of the story? Because at first you said that you let her go just because you let her go. And then as soon as you got in trouble for it, oh, it's Kofi's fault. And then, no, it's the Shaitani's fault. So, okay, first of all, it represents your own failure. And then second, it's starting to represent a second chance. Redemption, right? The Shaitani is redemption for Ekon, because if he kills the Shaitani and therefore eradicates the problem that's plaguing all of Lakosa, then you can be a son of the Six. He has run this plan by no one but his brother. He's expecting that to be the outcome. And so just seeing these 2 things, we don't know what the Shaitani is going to come to mean to Adia yet. At the beginning of part 2, we don't know. But for 2 of those 3 characters, it's just interesting seeing what they perceive that monster to represent for them. The overarching representation of the Shaitani, which is fearsome and all these different things. And then what the Shaitani will ultimately mean. That is what I am so interested in as a reader. Is like, what are we gonna see? Because after the Gilded Ones by Nami no Forna and the Death Shrieks and what they actually were, right? I just cannot receive monstrosity the same way ever again. After Ebony Elizabeth Thomas and the Gilded Ones, I cannot receive monstrosity without deep investigation of what that monster is supposed to be revealing and what makes it a monster to you. Right? Like, why is it monstrous to you? Because also, yes, monsters are figures of revelation if we're talking about the etymology of the word, but also monsters represent the limit of knowledge, right? So the monster stands at the border. I'm thinking with Jeffrey Jerome Cohen, who wrote the 7 Monsters thesis, and I'm also thinking with Kelly Murphy, like in writing about zombies, but also when talking about zombies, they talk about monsters in general, and they literally talk about maps, right? Because maps are, yes, it's cartography, but it also is a physical, right? It's an animated, is an illustration of knowledge. What is written on the map, what is drawn on the map, is what we know. Where the borders of the map is, that's what we don't know, right? And so in borders that we don't know on a few maps, not as many as popular culture would have us to believe, but on some ancient maps, there would be this Latin phrase, hic sunt dracones, which means here be dragons. It wasn't about whether dragons really were there. It's about the dragon as a monster representative. We don't know what's here. So we don't know what's here. So in this place could be mythical creatures that we don't know, right? We don't know where those creatures are. We don't know what's over here. So you see this equivalency between legendary creatures that we don't really know and places that we don't really know, and abstractions in our concrete knowledge, right? And so all of these things that monsters represent, and I see all of those things functioning for Beast of Prey, because Kofi's best friend, his name is escaping me, Kofi's best friend said, well, the first thing you're gonna need if you're gonna go to the greater jungle to get this creature is a map. Right. And so it's amazing to me how I'm seeing all of these theoretical things at play in Beast of Prey, and we're in part 1. So it is day 2. It's not really day 2. It's October 5th. And I rather than doing every single day, I decided to do parts. So when I finished, so I started the vlog when I finished part 1. So I decided, oh, that probably is better to do like a reaction to each part. I think that there's 4 parts to this book, so I was like, okay, it might be better to do a reaction to each part than to do every single day, because this book is long. The physical book is 496 pages. The audiobook is 15 hours and 42 minutes. So, that takes time to get through. I don't need to have a reaction every single day. If you want my reactions every single day, then go to my Twitter, which is at BritWriterly, and you'll see my Twitter thread, and that will give you more of a every day I'm reading, I give a reaction to that thread. It's getting quite long. So go there for that. Here, we're just going to do parts. Okay, so I just finished part 2. So part 1, the premise world, the status quo world. Part 2, upside down world, shall we, in the greater jungle. And I think in part 2, what I want to focus on, so whether each of these isn't like super long because it'll build on each other every part. Part 2 is the upside down world, and it's also when we see Ekon, Kofi, and Adia's individual characters and their interpersonal dynamics. So we see fatal flaws, we see character flaws, and we see their dynamics with each other. Except for Adia, we see Adia's dynamics with the people around her, where she is not with Ekon and Kofi, because again, those POVs have yet to intersect. I suspect a timeline situation, because it's not Adia's surroundings are not giving me that she is from a totally different place, because she's still talking about splendor, which is like Kofi sets the night zoo on fire with splendor, which now is like her mom says doesn't exist. So Adia's timeline is giving me, Adia's POV is giving me a different timeline when splendor is more of a thing. Or even perhaps that she is in that like very far off place that the old woman tells Kofi about in the market. So my 2 hypotheses: either Adia is in the same timeline with Kofi and Ekon, and she's in those far off plains where the Daraja used to be, or she is in like ancient Lakosa or early Lakosa, where the Daraja are still very much a thing and splendor is very much still used and known about. Which one, time will tell, but that's my feel. And so just to go in order quickly, Ekon Ekon is very type A. And compulsive. Now, Adia is compulsive as well. They're compulsive in two different ways. Ekon is compulsive as in the way he needs everything to go to plan. He needs 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Like, now, I have a soft spot for that sort of compulsion because I have a character who also has a thing with numbers, and so I'm like, my heart, right? But it's not, I'm not calling that a flaw. I'm just saying we're getting a lot more of characterization with Ekon, and that is a compulsion that he has. And he needs everything to go to plan or he gets testy. And he's a bit elitist because of, growing up in La Costa, his proximity to power via his late father and his older brother being in the Sons of Six, and him working in the temple, and him having been in the temple since he was young, and Brother Ugo taking a liking to him. Like, he's just positioned around powerful people. Now, does he have their power? Not necessarily. And we see that when he fails, his test, but even if the power is not your own, proximity to power does do things. And we see that in his interpersonal dynamics with Kofi when he's like, stop cussing, and why don't you do this and why don't you do that? And she's like, I'm not allowed to do this or that because I'm not fancy enough. She doesn't say it like that, but basically, like, I'm not in the class where I'm allowed to worship in this way, right? And so, like, we see a little bit of Ekon's class elitism come out in his interpersonal relationship with Kofi. When we compare Ekon and Kofi, child, oil and vinegar, oil and water, not oil and vinegar, those things go together. Oil and water, oil and water, fire and water, just opposite elements, but they could be complementary, and they start to get complementary near the end of part 2. But in the beginning of part 2, we really see how Ekon's need for everything to go to plan does not match up with Kofi's, like, go with the flow, that was the plan, now it's not anymore, we move. And Ekon is like, we do not move, we do not leave this spot until we have a plan B. And Kofi's like, all right, well, I'm going, so I'm gonna just head out, right? So this is definitely enemies to lovers, and Ayana Gray is definitely investing in the enemies portion of this, and I love it. I love it. Make us earn it. And she is, because they add each other, child. And so while Kofi is more flexible than Ekon, and she is very straightforward, you're not gonna wonder what she has to tell you. She also is very repressed. She is repressed, as is Ekon, about different family traumas and childhood traumas. They both have childhood traumas. She's repressed in the way, like, she doesn't let herself cry. She won't let herself emote about certain things. We don't talk about her dad much, even though, as far as I can tell, it's your daddy's fault. You're in this pseudo convict leasing night zoo worker situation in the first place, where now you're out here chasing a fantastical monster. That's your dad's fault. Now, choices have been made by you as well, but the fact that you're in this situation of working at the night zoo is through no fault of your own. You were 4 or 5 years old, and she has said nothing about how she feels that her father put her and her mother in this position, even though you learn in part 2 that it was her dad taking out bad debts that put them in this position. And so it's just like, all right, I'm sensing some repression around your father and repression of your own emotions. I'm not gonna let them see me cry. I won't let them have this part of me, when it's like, no, it's not them having this part of you, it's you owning yourself, being self-possessed enough to allow yourself to react. Now, if you don't want to cry in front of them, fine, but you're not letting yourself cry at all. That's the worry. And so we see that part of Kofi. Adia is compulsive. She is not compulsive in the same way that Ekon is. Ekon has this 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Adia is compulsive in a way that is completely undisciplined, which is the opposite of Ekon's compulsion. He is compelled to go to the plan. Adia is like, go to the what? Nah, man, me and Splendor, that's all. So like, completely different compulsion. She is really sort of driven, and I think there's some arrogance there as well. I'm good at the Splendor, I can hold it within me. Yeah, that has more like control, but mine had more power, where it's like, you gotta have a teachable heart, bruh. Like, yes, your master has already said that you have great potential, but hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And you still have things to learn. It doesn't feel like you're sitting at anybody's feet to learn what all these masters are saying that you need to learn. Whether you like the way they say it to you or not, they're all saying you need to learn control and how to be a medium for the Splendor. But you don't want to be a medium. You kind of want to be a vessel with the lid on it. Like you want to take it in and hold it. You don't want to let it pass through you. And so like, Adia has some discipline issues. She has some impulse control issues, and you see it hurt people around her. So that's what you learn in part two. Part two was us getting to see like, what's the issues with them, who are their inner bad guys, and what are they gonna have to do. And then we also get to explore the outer black guy, the outer bad guys. Dakari, he can get these hands. I'm on the Dakari slander squad, period. He can get these whole hands. So we see like, he is sort of like an antagonist to Ekon. He is a snitch. He's a snitch. He's a snitch. Can we just say it? He's a snitch. So he's a snitch. Just don't like Ekon, which like, find something better to do with your life. I don't know what to tell you. But so Dakari, and then the Shatani. Oh, and Boz, who is, Kofi's antagonist, the one who holds her debt. He's the owner of the night zoo. She has to tussle with him. And so we meet inner bad guys and outer bad guys in part two. I am still loving it. I dare say, and I already said it on my Twitter, and this is just true. Like, this isn't because Ayana Gray is a sorority sister and she's from Arkansas, whatever. Like, those things are fantastically great, but good writing is good writing. And the reality is, this is an exquisitely written book. Part one, part two, I'm in part three now. She's loving it. Like, it's good. Like, it's really excellent. It really is excellent. Like, y'all know I don't really order physical books often. I had to get a physical copy when I heard that she had a B&B book club version or something like that, where there was like chapter annotations. I said, oh no, because I'm a student. I have to be a student. Like, this is what I have been longing for. I said it in part one when I started the book, that I have really been longing for a way to have Black fantasy that isn't solely African inspired, that really does look at and take into account the African American experience, the Black American experience, and how we can have second world fantasy too. Like, our fantasy doesn't always have to be urban, doesn't always have to contend with racism, right? Like, to be Black in America is to be more. It's to be more, full stop. And Kofi said, was it Kofi? No, it's Adia. Adia is listening and she's hearing this thing, and there's these girls, one of them who's a mean girl and the other who's a mean girlfriend, but isn't like mean in her heart and doesn't always say mean things about Adia. The mean girl says something mean about Adia, whatever, hater's gonna age. And then the other girl says, yeah, Adia is just too much sometimes, and that hurts Adia more than what mean girl number one says. And I think that her being like, I'm too strong, I'm too, she goes through all these things, that she's too much this, too much that, too much that. I think in a really wonderful and brilliant way, Blackness is excessive. It refuses categorization, it refuses boundaries, it refuses, if we want to get theoretical, we could say it refuses temporality in particular ways. if we talk about the way that what we call Black past or Black history refuses to only be history, refuses to only be past, and we see that in especially in fantastic stories like ghost stories. We could talk about Beloved, or we could talk about Legendborn, right? Like these stories that have ghosts, these stories that have mediums, these stories that have as a pivotal point of the plot a reckoning with what has been, right? We could call that a manner of being excessive if we wanted to take it there. But if we want to just talk about the individual level, a single Black subject and being excessive, or even like generically, like in the genre of Black fantasy, which is what I was originally talking about when I went to Adia. Just like Adia deserves to be too much of anything or whatever, Black fantasy deserves to exist outside of racism, deserves to exist outside of police brutality, deserves to exist outside of all the things that the white American imaginary thinks it is to be Black in America. Our fantasies deserve to dream beyond that. And sometimes when I don't see that happening enough, it will never be enough. See that happening a lot. That's what I take from that. That once again, as always, we are trying to confine Blackness to a very narrow set of circumstances that constrict or attempt to constrict Black Americans' ability to freedom dream, which is to say to dream beyond a subjected state of being. And so, in Beast of Prey, though, we get this connection between Black American identity and experience and the rest of the diaspora. I think that link is pivotal, and that really has been helpful for me. All right, y'all, welcome to part 3. Okay, so it is October 7th. It's 3:10 a.m. Because I just finished taking down my hair and washing my hair and twisting my hair. So, it's a lot. But part 3. Okay. So if part 2 is us meeting and facing the inner bad guys, like seeing the character flaws of our 3 heroes and seeing their interpersonal dynamics with each other, and like also seeing not just their character flaws, but like what's behind those, right? Like what's the childhood trauma behind those. They had to face some inner bad guys in part 2. Part 3, outer bad guys close in. So if Ayana is using the Save the Cat beat sheet, I think that this may be like the bad guys close in beat. Now obviously that's not the entire part 3, but in part 3, bad guys close in. I've decided not to spoil, so I'm not gonna say like big things that happen. I'm just gonna say the bad guys close in. Our characters are at a crossroads of decisions, particularly Ekon, with his allegiance to his brother, with his growing attraction and allegiance to Kofi and their new plan, which has global implications, right? And by global, I mean all of La Costa, so that world. And just his own trying to figure out where he fits in with those aspirations that he has to be a son of the Six. And so those things converge at the end of part 3, and that takes us into part 4. For Kofi, she learns more about her sort of like magical inheritance, her use of the splendor. And for Adia meets someone new and Tao doesn't like this someone new. The someone new's name is Dakari. I don't know that I like Dakari. And that's just because I'm on Team Tao. That's just because I am on Team Tao. Now, am I on Team Tao to be with Adia? Not necessarily, right? Because, like, if she doesn't want to be with him, every right. But here's my thing. We must be responsible. And like I said, for Adia, she's compulsive. She's undisciplined. She's kind of arrogant. And so maybe that arrogance, which we might also call self-centeredness, makes her a little less aware of how her actions impact others. Because she's just like, Tao is my best friend. Here's the thing. That's fine. That is fine. It is fine for you to friend zone Tao. It is fine for you to not like Tao. Totally fine. And you need to be aware of how that decision is going to affect Tao. Now, if he was some stranger in a bar, why would a 17-year-old be in a bar? If he was some 17-year-old in the temple, some stranger, right? Who cares? Whatever. Like, don't be rude about it, but you don't have any responsibility to him. But if you're going to say he's my best friend, then you should care about how he feels, even if you don't reciprocate his feelings. And you shouldn't want your decision to hurt him. Now, to some extent, it's going to hurt him anyway. But to just stick your head in the sand and be like, I don't know why Tao is looking like that. I don't know what the hurt under his voice is. You would if you stopped to think about it. You would if you stopped to think about it. You are so aware of what everyone says about you, but you can't give 5 seconds to think about Tao. Don't be wanting $25 from everybody else if you only have $2 to give to your best friend. Like, come on. Like, if you want something from others, you should be prepared to give that. And she wants this sort of acknowledgement from others that she doesn't necessarily give to Tao. Now, the acknowledgement she wants from others is different from the acknowledgement that Tao wants from her. I understand that. But I'm just saying, you want so badly to be seen for who you are, to not be seen as too much this, right? Or that or the third. But you won't see Tao for who he is, which is a guy who likes you. I just hated to see that. I just hated to see it because Tao is sweet. Now, I don't have, like, I'm not necessarily Team Tao in, like, a huge way, like I'm Team Kofi, but I just hate that he is hurting in that way and that Adia is acting like she don't see the stuff. Because Dakari is here and Dakari is cute and Dakari likes me and Dakari wants to show me things and I'm going to take Dakari to our secret spot. Now here's me. Loyalty is very important to me. Don't be taking someone to our secret spot. No. I would be just as tight as Tao was about it. How dare you? And for Adia to be like, Tao, I think you're overreacting. That's when I was like, girl, now you tripping and you trifling. That's when I was like, you tripping and you trifling, because he is, even if he hasn't said, I like you, he is expressing to you that as a friend, that was something that you all shared in confidence. And you just let some other dude who you feeling come in, like, even if you did it because whatever, I think Dakari sees me, whatever. I understand emotionally why you might want to reveal pieces of yourself to him, so that the feeling of being seen is deeper, right? The feeling of acceptance is deeper. Sure, fine, whatever. But when you just like disregard Tao's feelings about it, that's when I'm like, you're being hypocritical. You want to be seen, but you're not looking this man dead in his face, and that's not fair. That's not fair. You don't have to return his feelings, but you can look him in the eye and acknowledge them. And for you not to do that is just like, that's not fair. So we get to see sort of that. We get this new guy, Dakari. There's some tension between Dakari and Tao and Adia. It's a love triangle. Every YA fantasy needs one. Because Slick, lest we forget, there's a love triangle between Jabari, Kofi, and Ekon. Jabari is the guy who is like a little brother to Kofi, but we know that he has feels for her, right? Because once again, this unfathomable look that I don't understand. Kofi and Adia are a lot alike, which is kind of scary because Adia seems to be on a clear path to destruction, but we pray her strength in the Lord. So that's part 3. We get a couple of new characters come in who cause some tension. We continue to meet fantastic beasts in the greater jungle. They continue to force our characters to face inner demons, and then as at a climax in part 3, the outer bad guys close in. Ekon's at a crossroads. He makes a decision. He makes the decision about outer bad guys that is born from his conflict with his inner bad guys. And all I will say at the end of part 3 is, y'all, we down bad. I am just trying to understand what she wants from us. I'm just trying to understand if she wants us to offer her food and water for the next 2 years while she gets these books out. I'm just trying to understand if she wants us to just, regularly cash app her? Like, what is it that Ayana Gray wants from us after that ending? That's my question. What do you want? That's the real question, Ayana. What do you want from us now? What are we supposed to do for a year while we wait? While we wait for this, what is her name? What is it? Timba? Okay. Hello. Hey, Timba. How you doing, girl? Like, what do you want from us while we wait for Timba and Ekon to figure out a plan to get Kofi back? And there's nothing I can say about Adia that won't be a spoiler. So you just gonna have to read it. You're gonna have to read it. No words, because I could go on and on and on and say how important this book is to me and the reasons why, but I've already said that. I've already said it. I'm a fan. If you were wondering if she was going to fumble the bag in the last chapters and somehow make me fall completely out of love with BOP, you're wrong. It didn't happen. I feel like I need to do some. I'm caught between should I lay down, right? Should I just take 5 off this? Should I just take 5? Or should I get up immediately and run headfirst into the query trenches? Now, I'm not sure yet what I should do, but I feel the need to do something. Don't you love it when books just say, you need to do something? When the way a book is written, you need to do something. Y'all, this book is, I'm shaking the camera. This book is good. It's good. Now, thoughts on okay, let me collect my stuff. Let me gather. This book, part 4. Part 4 was child. Part 4 was a lot. Things happened quickly, but what I see sometimes, and what I have to watch out for sometimes in my own writing, is at the end of the book, Child, I'm tired. And I'm like, okay, cool. This is how it's going to end. And I race to the end. And I see other books race to the end. And it's sometimes it's too much. And I have to pull back and slow a scene down. And I see scenes that should have been slowed down. And I'm like, oh, that was abrupt. Or, oh, that was fill in the blank, right? Like the story ends too fast. This story, even though it ends on a what's going to happen next, right? Even though it ends there, but it didn't seem abrupt. It didn't seem too fast. It was like, I think it's the trick is to write a book that's almost 500 words. At that point, nothing will seem abrupt or too fast. Maybe that's it. I don't know. But it did not seem abrupt because honestly, it was like, you have literally taken us to the wall. You have taken us, I can roll to this wall if I want to, but if I want to go beyond the wall, I'm simply going to have to blow it out. That's what the end of Beast of Prey is. It's like, I'm going to take you throughout this entire mansion. I'm going to take y'all on a tour through Graceland and throw in some beasts to keep you excited and awake. And then I'm going to take y'all to the back wall. That's what Beast of Prey is. Like, you go on a huge adventure, and whenever you think, oh, it could end here, we're not done yet, we're busting through. But the end of Beast of Prey is like, if you go beyond this scene, it will be another book. And Ayana was like, you're right, I'm gonna stop here. You're right. You called it, I'm gonna stop here. And that's what it felt like. Okay, cool. Like, this truly is the story of book one. It really is. So oh my gosh, I was tired at the end, and I'm tired now. But it was a story well told. The stamina that I'm sure it took to write that, even beyond her working on it for 5 years, just hearing her talk about her writing process, that like she writes the story over from the beginning whenever she has revisions. Like, she can't just type into that document, and like, she doesn't. The stamina that it must have taken to give us this story, and the stamina it will take you to read it. You need to have a snack, and you need to have a notebook. You do, because there's so much going on. But it's good. So at the end, we get reckoning with this decision that Ekon made, and we get Kofi having to make some decisions of her own in this final battle with Fedu, the god of death. I think he's the god of death, or maybe he's just introduced death to the world. Again, I'm gonna have to read this book again physically, and I'm gonna need a bigger notebook than this, more pens than like this. This is a master text for me. I'm gonna have to read it again. But we get this final battle with Fedu where we finally realize who he is, and we have to reckon with that. We get a sort of coming to a head of Ekon and Kamal's relationship. We get some stuff with Adia, I Can Say No More. We get Kofi making decisions, I Can Say No More. So it's just, everyone is taken to that wall. And it really is like, the story has to end here. It's a really, really complete first installment of a series. This is very satisfying and absolutely like whets your appetite for more, even after all we've been through. So I think it's just extremely well done, well executed, well conceptualized. I am a fan of this book. If I continue to talk about it for the rest of our acquaintance, don't say a word to me about it. Just don't. That's just that. So in summation, right? Because I think after an hour, I've given you enough. I really, 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 really love this book. I appreciate this book. It really has answered a lot of questions that I had as a writer and as a reader. You giving me a Black world, I love it, right? I love it. So I just, as a reader, it's giving me representation that I have not seen enough of, which is Pan-African inspired fantasy. And as a writer, it is a model for me in my own writing of Black fantasy, how to do the things that I've been trying to do. This is a master text, a model for me on how to do it. So grateful as a reader and as a writer. Would recommend 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10, 50 out of 50, whatever. Like, it's so anyway, that book was amazing. That's all. I could go on and on and on, but I will try not to. I literally just finished that book 10 minutes ago, if that. That's why I'm like wigging. But I think it's just an exceptional book. The end. I mean, I would just keep repeating that for the next 30 minutes. So I'm just gonna like cut myself off here. But 5 out of 5 read. Definitely have your libraries order it. Even if you already own it, when libraries purchase books, that supports the author as well. So definitely any library that you're a card holder at, request them to buy this book. If you read it, review it on whatever platforms you have, Goodreads, Storygraph, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, if that's where you got it from, like whatever. But this book is a gem, not just for me, but not just for me, but for the category and the genre of YA fantasy. It's an important offering to the field. So I'm just super excited. I cannot wait to see what this author does next in this world and beyond. I'm just excited for an author who I can tell takes care with how she crafts a story, with the politics, the ethics, like she's in it. And I cannot wait to see what else she has for us. I'm super, super excited. I have to sign off now because nothing is going to happen beyond this point but fangirling, and that's just the truth. So thank you all so, so much for watching. I will see y'all in the next video, whatever it may be. Until then, bye-bye.